thinking about the words we're using, or if we're
Good morning, everybody. So this morning we are going to be joined by three professionals in our community. Our company is Sharpe CFO. We're based in Northeast Ohio. We are a CFO firm specializing in providing CFOs, controllers, and analysts to companies around the $10 million to $100 million range. We provide those folks in interim or fractional basis, 1 to 5 days a week. We also partner with professionals that include folks like we're going to be speaking with today. I wanted to put this together for those of us in our audience and community to have each of them go through in their own practice areas a little bit about risk mitigation for both an accountant, an attorney, and an insurance perspective. Each is going to get about 10 to 15 minutes of time to talk about their area. As we get questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll ask after all the presentations are over. This presentation will be also on our YouTube channel, as well as on Facebook, and I'll provide the link to the presenters. They'll also provide their own contact information as well while they're presenting. So again, thank you all very much for coming on and participating. I'll actually go ahead and start with Justin Stevenson. I'll let him introduce himself and a little bit about what he's going to be talking about. So, Justin.
There we go. Thanks for the introduction, Ryan, and thanks for putting all this together and hosting everyone here today. My name is Justin Stevenson. I'm an attorney. I work for Bauer Stevenson, LLC. We are a Cleveland-based law firm. We do a lot of business law, generally pretty much any practice area that touches on your business, from contract work to labor and employment to litigation, we can help handle for you. So we've been getting a lot of questions about how to approach all of this COVID situation, and now particularly how to start approaching your situation as a business when you're reopening your doors. And you can check us out at bowerstevenson.com. Easy to find us on the internet. I'll probably drop a link and some contact information into the chat in a bit, instead of just blasting our website across your screen there. But some of you are probably here from our newsletter, so you get that contact information already, or Ryan can give it to you if anyone is interested in asking additional questions after we're done with the presentation here. So the kind of impetus for why we're talking today is to get some ideas on what to do when your business is starting to reopen. And from a legal perspective, what we've been discussing with our clients and what we've been telling people is that it's very important to do everything very intentionally. It's going to be important to document all of your decisions, have a reason why you're making your decisions, and to be doing your due diligence in when you start to reopen your doors. And plenty of our clients won't begin to start reopening on the very first day that they're allowed, even if they're allowed to open on May 1st, because they want to make sure that they get their ducks in a row before they just open their doors and expose themselves to some serious liability. So that's an option for everybody. Don't think that because they're allowing you to open your doors, that means you have to start running again immediately on that first day. It's probably better for you in the long run if you take your time, consult with the people that you're closest with, so that you get a good idea of what you need to do and how to do it properly. Some background information in case everyone isn't super familiar with how the Governor DeWine's administration is actually handling this. On Friday, May 1st, so starting tomorrow, there will be kind of like a rolling schedule of the types of businesses that are allowed to reopen. Starting tomorrow, the most healthcare services will be allowed to reopen, and they'll be allowed to do a lot of outpatient services. So pretty much anything can resume as long as it doesn't require overnight hospitalization. If you're in and out of a dentist, if you're in and out of even acupuncture offices are beginning to reopen. So things like that, you're going to be able to see your doctors again. Some, again, I think aren't necessarily opening tomorrow and will probably start on Monday, but you'll start seeing a lot of those opening. Then on Monday, May 4th, you have manufacturing, distribution, and construction businesses. Those guys will be allowed to reopen their doors and resume services then, along with general office environments. So service businesses that, you know, they're not out in the world, they're hanging out in their offices doing marketing or PR, or law firms, I guess, were already open, but those types of service businesses will be allowed to reopen their doors and continue to operate again. And then Tuesday, May 12th, consumer, retail, and other services generally, except for the ones that are specifically remaining closed, are going to be allowed to reopen. And the individuals that are remaining closed, actually probably would be helpful if I just shared my screen and showed you guys where to get this information as we go forward. Make sure that's the right screen. All right, so you guys should be able to see the Responsible Restart Ohio here. If I'm showing the wrong screen, somebody just yell at me and I'll fix it. But the coronavirus.ohio.gov has a portal for all of this information. There's a lot of information here. Sometimes it's kind of hard to dig through, but this is kind of the quick and easy way to find this information. If you click on continued business closures there, of course, these are the specified businesses that are not going to be allowed to reopen just yet. So schools and daycares, restaurant and bars, personal appearance, beauty services. Unfortunately, we still can't get those haircuts that we so desperately desire. But a lot of great information here on coronavirus.ohio.gov, along with the governor's Twitter account actually has been providing a lot of really good up-to-date information. And of course, you know, reach out to all of us if you have questions. But the importance of all this is, of course, then if I'm a business that's allowed to reopen, what do I have to do to protect myself as I reopen for business? And the importance of what you're going to need to do for yourself is to mitigate your risk and mitigate your liability to people that you're going to interact with when you start to open again. That's a lawyer's job, right? Is to try to advise you and try to help you through mitigating as much possible risk as you can, and to avoid getting sued. Generally, you know, unless you get sued, then it's their job is obviously to defend you. Hopefully, though, we can help you avoid some of that, because it's a lot more expensive to get sued than it is to try to avoid it in the first place. So you're going to have to be worried about liability to customers if you're not complying with the regulations that you're supposed to follow. You're going to be worried about liability to employees if you're not complying with the new risk leave laws or the new sick leave laws, and their exposure to COVID in the context of all the other employment law areas that you already have to comply with, like the ADA. And of course, you're going to want to make sure you're in compliance with all the regulations that the health department sets out, because you face fines and penalties for not complying with the governor's orders in what you're supposed to do as you're reopening. And a lot of this, you're going to want to make sure that you have proper policies and proper procedures in place. Written policies, very important. Making sure that you have policies in writing, because a lot of times what courts are going to look at, what people are going to look at on what your business is telling people to do is the policies. Your business kind of speaks through those policies and how well you enforce them as well, of course. So there are a bunch of regulations that we'll touch on real quick that the Governor DeWine's administration is requiring people to implement as they reopen, and there are industry-specific regulations as well. So those kind of things you're going to want to make sure you have in writing, so that you can provide them to your employees, so that you can provide them to your customers, and it's clear that you told everybody that they're supposed to follow these regulations, so that you are covering yourself on the back end. So the things that the administration generally is telling people that they're going to need to do is continue to maintain that 6-foot social distancing in their operations. So if you have an office environment, try to make sure you have a situation where everybody's at least 6 feet away from each other. If you have more of an open office environment before, where you have people just kind of sitting at a table and they have seats right next to each other, it's probably not gonna work technically as you reopen now. So you're gonna have to find a way to spread people out a little bit more. Some industries are required to undergo to perform daily symptom assessments on their employees as they come to work, to make sure that people aren't showing up to work with symptoms of coronavirus, so that they're, again, mitigating the spread. Your employers, offices are going to be required to implement policies on regular hand washing and regular cleanliness policies. And of course, across the board, the administration suggests that if possible, employers, offices allow employees to continue to work from home if possible. And as we've mentioned in some of our newsletters and some of our presentations, and as you've probably seen from all kinds of people throughout the last 2 months, you want to make sure you're implementing good employment policies here too with your employees as they're working from home, to make sure that you're safeguarding your information, to make sure that it's clear what work the employees are allowed to do and when they're not supposed to be working, so you're not running into wage and hour violations, and making sure that, again, you're covering yourself for liability on the back end. So I'll pull up the kind of sector-specific requirements here, and there is a lot of all this to go through, and so don't be afraid if you don't know everything all at once. That's what people like Andrew, Carrie, Ryan, and I are here to do, is to help you through this. But it'll give you a good idea of kind of how they're going through to explain how people are supposed to reopen. So for manufacturing, distribution, and construction, for example, just like we were talking about, ensure that minimum 6 feet between people as your employees, as your construction personnel are working. If not possible, install barriers in between people. They're going to be requiring face covering. So you're going to require masks, things like that, to cover face while employers or employees are on the job, unless one of these exceptions applies. Require regular hand washing, daily symptom assessment again. So there's a lot going on here, and even more regulations and suggestions if you work on a shift pattern. For example, things you got to do to make sure you're disinfecting between shifts. Physical workstations, regulations here to make sure you're following these. And then general office environments, probably very important to everyone actually on the panel here today. Similar requirements, ensuring that you have 6 feet between people, if not possible, install barriers. Suggesting face coverings, or requiring face coverings unless one of these exceptions applies. Daily symptom assessments, requiring employees to stay home if they're symptomatic, and setting up frequent disinfection of desks, workstation, and high contact surfaces. So of all of this, there's a lot of information here. What you're going to want to do is try to get it as concise, try to get it as concisely written as possible for your people, for your employees, for your customers. You want to have policies for your employees that explain to them exactly what they need to do. You want to have policies for your managers that explain to them what they need to make sure they're doing every day, and their responsibilities for ensuring that these cleanliness provisions are done, and making sure that everyone is on the same page and everyone understands and is clearly communicated to everyone what their responsibilities and obligations are. And another good idea that we've discussed with a few of our clients who were essential businesses that will now carry into everyone else that's reopening, is you want to make sure you have some sort of documentation if you're engaging with clients and customers face to face on a regular basis. Some sort of documentation that maybe a waiver or informed consent type of document where they're certifying that they haven't been in contact with anyone with COVID to their knowledge, and that they don't have any symptoms either, and that they're required to inform you if they are, so that your employees can make sure that they don't get in contact with them if they do have symptoms, or if they have been in contact with somebody else who has symptoms. So there's a lot going on here, right? The best practice is to get with your trusted team, your trusted advisors, get with your business attorney, have them go through these documents with you, have them implement your policies and procedures, and make sure that at very least you're following the requirements here set forth by the government and the Ohio Department of Health, and even more than that, making sure that for your specific business, you're taking whatever additional measures are possible to protect yourself as you move forward. So I've been, I think, going on for about 15 minutes now. That's kind of a really quick overview of the legal considerations, legal concerns you're going to have as you go forward. But I think I'll pass it on now to whoever else is up next, so that we get some good information from the CPAs and insurance folks too.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So I know there is like so much information. It's actually really good to see that what you were just sharing with us is out there as a resource. Would you be able to put that maybe in the comment chat section, the website you were looking at?
Yeah, I can. And in addition to like the drop-down boxes that I was showing you guys, there's also, I should have mentioned, a lot of PDFs and downloads that you can have, like little quick checklists and one-off sheets to make sure that you have the information at hand, so you can kind of move forward as you're helping your business to reopen.
Cool. All right. Yeah, thanks a lot. We'll probably have a few questions for you afterwards, but kind of want to move on here to Carrie with Zito Insurance, talk a little bit about insurance risk. So, Carrie.
Okay, good morning. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you can see the PowerPoint. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Carrie. I am the Business Application Specialist at Zito Insurance. That basically means I work with small and mid-sized businesses to help reduce their risks and hopefully the likelihood of having insurance claims. Zito Insurance is located in Mentor and in Rocky River. We were founded in 1963, and in 2019, we joined Risk Strategies. Risk Strategies has access to over 200 property and casualty insurance companies and specialty practices. So by joining Risk Strategies, we have lots more options and a lot of services we can offer to our clients in Northeast Ohio and the rest of the country. This screen just shows some areas of specialty that Risk Strategies and Zito Insurance works with, and we also focus a lot on working with nonprofits at the agency. So moving on to what we're going to cover in the way of insurance today, we're going to talk about specifically property and casualty related impacts rather than life and health insurance. And as we know, so much related to coronavirus is changing day by day. So this is a fluid situation, and there's pending legislation related to insurance. So the information I'm going to share may change going forward. Also, so much in insurance is based on the individual company's contracts and policy language. So of course, I have to note that this material isn't a substitute for your policy, your agent, your team of experts, or insurance carrier. And to reiterate what Justin said, this is a great time to take advantage of relationships with experts, like your lawyers, your law firms, your accountants, etc. Prevention is certainly better than a claim or a lawsuit. So let's move on to premium release. A grace period was announced per the Ohio Department of Insurance release of March 30th. It's a grace period that applies to property and casualty policies as well as life and long-term care. Again, it's a grace period, not a premium waiver. And we've received notification from some carriers that they're going to be extending their billing relief plans. So if your organization is having trouble making payments, I also suggest reaching out to your agent or the carrier to see if a different payment schedule might be available or some kind of accommodation. The other thing we've seen in the past month is some carriers have provided premium payback or premium reduction programs of 10, 15, 20%, et cetera, for personal auto, business owners policies, and a few other policy types. So hopefully you're benefiting from some of those. So with so many businesses temporarily shut down, the hot topic of the moment in insurance right now is COVID-19 and the loss of business income or business interruption. Business interruption coverage is usually incorporated in a commercial property policy, and coverage is typically triggered under the commercial insurance policy when a covered risk or peril causes physical damage to the insured's premises, resulting in the need to shut down the business operations. So for example, a fire damages a business. The business cannot operate during the repairs, so business interruption coverage could be available, obviously subject to the terms and conditions and the limits of the policy. Insurance policies typically have exclusions for coverage for risks that are just too great to be underwritten at an affordable price. So for example, commercial insurance, property insurance policies often contain specific exclusions for loss or damage caused by war, nuclear action, radiations. The potential from such perils is so huge and extreme that providing coverage would jeopardize the financial stability, the financial solvency of the property insurance. So global pandemics like COVID-19 usually fall into this category. But again, always refer to your policy because there are some exceptions, and it's important to remember that your agent doesn't decide if coverage applies. That's something only the insurer can do. Right now, there are regulators across the country that are looking at this potential gap in coverage. Legislators in at least 6 states have drafted or introduced legislation that would require insurers to cover business income claims. So in Ohio has pending legislation, House Bill 589, and as proposed, this bill would essentially force all insurance companies doing business in the state to pay for business interruption claims, even if coverage does not apply. So whether this legislation or other legislation is approved in any form at a state or a national level remains to be seen. So here are some business interruption suggestions. We suggest clients keep track of their business income losses so they can be prepared if and when a response to address the issue is unveiled. Gather data such as payroll information, financial statements, sales records, pre-loss income, inventory and expense records, variable costs that have reduced or stopped during the business interruption, etc. You can report your claims to your insurance company, and your agent can assist you in filing the claim. Again, the agents don't decide if the coverage applies. That's something only the insurer can do. 2 other areas that we expect to hear more about in the coming months are professional liability and executive risk. Given the large percentage of COVID-19 cases documented at long-term care facilities and at nursing homes, we anticipate a surge in lawsuits alleging negligent care, as well as an increased call for states to cap the liability of these entities. In either scenario, future insurance trends are going to be impacted by these developments. Regarding executive risk, additional claims stemming from a business's management's failure to adequately plan for and address exposures relating to issues surrounding COVID-19 costs is also going to be a concern. Shareholders might look to exploit these policies to obtain funds to offset drops in share price or other business-related problems. Further claims might arise as a result of creditor actions from bankruptcies. So obviously there are some unknowns, and we're going to be monitoring the situation as it unfolds. So what happens if you're from an insurance perspective, what happens if you're sued by an employee or third party from COVID-19 on your premises? So a general liability policy responds to allegations of negligence which lead to bodily injury or property damage. The definition of bodily injury typically includes disease as a covered item. However, many companies now have policies that include a broad exclusion for virus as a response to the SARS outbreak. So check with your agent or broker if you don't know if you have general liability, as well as to find out if your policy includes the virus exclusion. In all cases, it will be up to the plaintiff in any such litigation to prove that you acted negligently in allowing the alleged infection to spread to the third party. And again, as always, the insurer will ultimately determine whether coverage applies. So Justin hit on a lot of the steps that we recommend to protect yourself from potential liability. So I don't want to reinvent this wheel, but follow the state, local, responsible restart, CDC, et cetera, specific guidance, cleaning, limiting access, documenting, et cetera. One other resource that you might want to consider is OSHA. OSHA has developed guidance for classifying worker exposure risks into lower, medium, high, and very high risk categories, and they provide guidance as in resources for protecting workers who perform job tasks in each risk level, and they have sector-specific guidance to check out. So that's right on their website. A couple of other policy-related and insurance-related issues. So if your business has modified its services because of the outbreak, or really at any time, it's important to check in with your agent about the changes. So a prime example for this right now is restaurants that have had to close their doors for in-house eating, but they've shifted to offering food delivery. So we're asked all the time, are my employees covered by our business insurance policy if they use their own car? Are they covered by their own personal auto policy? And like so many things in insurance, unfortunately, the answer is not straightforward, yes or no. So again, talk to your agent. It's really key to keep in touch, as you can probably see, with your agent and communicate what's going on with your team of experts to ensure you have the right coverages and the right risk management techniques in place. Also on this delivery issue, in efforts to support businesses, some companies, insurance companies, have temporarily suspended the enforcement of food delivery exclusions or offered the option to add non-owned auto endorsements to commercial policies. And again, it's not every company, and there might be some eligibility restrictions, so it's really important to check in with your agent. So if you've already purchased special event coverage, check the policy language and speak to your agent. Again, the lesson is speak to your agent. If your organization has an upcoming special event and you're looking to buy coverage, again, talk to the broker, talk to the agent. Ensure you have a clear sense of the risks and the perils covered or not covered by such a policy. Another time to talk to your agent right now, if your facility has become vacant or idle or will be vacant or idle, notify your broker. Just in case there is an exception clause in the property policy. This is not a be-all, end-all list, but wanted to keep this concise and down to the time allotted. Now, one other thing we're seeing, and we'll cover it a bit more in the next slide, is a lot of scams right now. And given the number of scams out there and how many of those require personal data, consider checking your personal insurance policy to see if you have identity theft coverage, or talk to your agent about identity theft coverage. So speaking of scams, let's talk about scams and cyber attacks and cyber insurance. So once again, we're seeing the importance and need for companies to have cyber coverage and train employees on how to detect and respond to phishing attacks. This is especially pertinent right now with so many employees working off-site and maybe some of the internal protections not being as strong as you might have had when everybody was working off of the same system. So due to the COVID-19 outbreak, cyber criminals are using fear, they're using uncertainty to prompt people to click on emails that promise things like supplies of paper products, hand sanitizer, PPE, other items in short supply. And we're seeing reports indicating that customers are giving away credit card information thinking they're buying these supplies. These phishing techniques aren't just coming in the form of emails, it's also happening from text and phone calls. So last Friday, the 24th, the Ohio Department of Insurance issued a consumer alert about phony insurance coverages being sold. We've got some of these on the screen. In these situations, consumers are asked to provide personal information and bank account or credit card information. The scammers are stealing the money through fake insurance premiums. So the Ohio Department of Insurance suggests consumers be wary of anyone marketing insurance products that heavily emphasize COVID-19 coverage. And they remind us all to never give personal, financial, or other insurance information to anyone unless you know who you're dealing with. If you've got a concern about somebody not being an agent or you want to check them out, the information is available on the Ohio Department of Insurance website where you can verify if somebody's licensed. Also, if you're looking for more information about scams, that website that Justin shared, the Ohio Department of Health, they have released a checklist for avoiding scams, and that covers non-insurance types of fraud like fake stimulus checks. So what do we expect coming down the road? Prior to the corona outbreak, we were already seeing a hardening of insurance markets. Now, with the additional financial pressures, the slowed down economy, we expect that insurance companies are going to be under increased pressure to protect their balance sheets and carefully manage their underwriting choices. We're also closely monitoring the impact on workers' comp claims for first responders, healthcare workers, and essential personnel like grocery store employees who might have become ill at work. The key to moving forward, and again, reiterating Justin's points, risk management is key. Having action plans in place to reduce liability, to keep employees and guests as safe as possible, ensuring precautions are in place for employees who work remotely, such as establishing a work remote policy if you don't already have one, training employees on how to detect and respond to phishing attacks, again, trying to avoid those cyber liability claims. For some industries, it's, these changes to how business is performed might be long-term. So to wrap it all up, we're obviously in the midst of some strange times, and measures that are being taken now by governments, employers, employees, families, and insurance companies have been implemented that we've just not seen before. So as the pandemic evolves, Zito Insurance and risk strategies will be here. We're here to help clients adjust coverage, develop risk management programs, and navigate our new reality. If I can help you, please let me know. We are in this together.
Hey, thanks, Carrie. So that was really, really good. And I know we're going to have some questions here after Andrew's done, but interestingly, so you're seeing then that companies are providing trip and event cancellation insurance then, or is that you'll be able to get it later?
So there have been a couple of different reports. The companies right now have been, and for years, they have been offering special event policies. So think like even golf outings or weddings. There's a big market for wedding insurance for that event, special fundraisers, those kinds of things. Those have been in the market for a while. The question at this point, and remains and probably may change down the road, is are viruses, specifically COVID-19, a covered peril in those, should you have to cancel?
Interesting. Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we'll have some more questions kind of coming in here after we're all done, but really good information. Thanks. And then we'll switch it over to Andrew then, who is a CPA. He's going to talk a little bit about some risk management when it comes to accounting. And I would imagine there might be something in there about how to account for money that you might be getting. So as soon as Carrie unshares, we'll let Andrew do his thing.
Okay. Did that work?
No.
Okay. How is that?
There you go.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I'll jump in here. I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Andrew Somich. I am the CEO of Somich and Associates. We're a full-service CPA firm, really focusing on working with small business owners, family-held businesses between 25 million to 50 million. But we work with a lot of smaller businesses and sole proprietors, focusing on helping them through this whole crisis. So we've put out hundreds of hours of research recently into all the different government assistance programs that's available, really guiding our clients through this and helping them, making sure that their businesses are fully protected and hopefully helping them have a good plan and course into action once we get past this this coronavirus. And so we've been doing a lot of research, and one of the first things that came out was the SBA disaster loan. that came out that allowed businesses to apply up to $10,000 of forgivable loan. That's considered a grant, and a part of that too, they're able to take on a loan at 3.75 that's paid over 30 years. But a lot of this is changing very quickly, so we're trying to stay on top of everything. Currently, we're unable to apply for this loan, but there are people that are in the queue. So if you did apply for this, you're still eligible for these loans. But the other one that I really want to talk about today is the Payroll Protection Program. The Payroll Protection Program is also known as the PPP, and this is administrated through the banking system or other institutions. So what this really is related to is for your payroll. They want people to get off of unemployment, back to work, get the economy going again. And so they allow 2.5 months of your average payroll. And the banks will get a loan through the SBA department. So there's a lot of requirements that you have to submit, such as your 940, 941s, and a calculation of your average payroll cost. So this is all submitted through your bank or other parties such as Lendio and Bluevine. And then the SBA will provide you a loan that allows you to use these funds to employ your employees again. This is calculated based off of your payroll before February 1st. And we take this calculation, and that allows you to have 8-week period of time to use this for payroll. That loan amount will also factor in a portion for rent. So if somebody obtains a loan of $1 million, 75% of it has to be related to payroll in order for it to be fully forgiven. And then the rest can be used for utilities and rent. So the SBA department, the banks are trying to get these loans processed as quickly as possible. Where the risk comes into play, and we're advising our clients, is making sure we have all the proper documentation for the loans to be fully forgiven. So we're in the process, and we're always very focused on the future and being prepared so that we have all the proper documentations. So a lot of our clients have already been through the process of applying for the PPP. Some of the banks are no longer accepting applications, so we have to look at other alternatives. So we've been actively reaching out and have a team in place that has been trying to find the right places and the best lenders out there. So if you haven't applied yet, I would definitely recommend to apply as soon as possible. They did release additional funds this past Monday at 10:30, and I just got some information that there's double the amount of applications during this round 2 than there was of the original loans. So people have been really receiving more information. I think that there's been a great job with the government providing as much information out there through social media, on the news, that these funds are available for small businesses. And small businesses include sole proprietors, anybody that receives a 1099. So even if you're not incorporated, you can still apply for the PPP loans. So we're working with a lot of realtors, other small businesses that are more contract-based, and they're able to apply for these loans and take on a loan. The calculation is a little bit different because they might not have W-2 employees, but certainly you would still qualify for it. So to go back on more of the risk situation is, so you do get a loan for $1 million, whatever amount that might be. We do need to have proper documentation. And we get a lot of questions too. I'm sure, please feel free to ask questions and we can address that directly for you. So we work with a few clients that have laid off or have been unable to operate their business. As soon as this PPP loan hits your account, that's when the 8-week period of time starts. So if you don't use those funds and you're still not in operations, your clock ticks, and you still need to use 75% of the loan amount for payroll purposes by the end of the 8-week period of time. There's going to be a lot more guidance from the SBA and the banks are going to tell us how we can make sure that we're forgiven. Because if we're not, then we have to pay back this loan amount over 2 years at 1% up to 4%. There's going to be some more guidance on that as well. But if a business thinks that they're going to use these funds, we need to make sure that they're fully forgiven, because the last thing we want to have happen is our clients or business owners to be on the hook for another loan that they would have to be required to be paid back. And so what the system is the part of the PPP loan is for people to get back to work. So there's a caveat in there that, as soon as your business owner, as an employee, as soon as your employer offers an opportunity for you to get back to work, Justin might be able to elaborate a little bit more on this too, is, that technically the employer can start paying, and you would no longer be eligible for unemployment. That's not our area of expertise, so we really rely on Justin and his team of advisors to making sure our employees are well covered and know the full guidance of the law. But we want to make sure from a financial situation and record keeping how to keep track of the PPP loans. We recommend opening up a separate business banking account and to put the funds for the PPP into there, and then have payroll directly withdraw from that. A lot of our clients have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, have always had a separate payroll account. Some of the younger businesses that we're working with just run everything through one checking account, but it's a proper checks and balances, and Ryan too, that their team advises probably on that as well, because we want to make sure that you're fully protected. So then we would be able to keep track, have all the proper documentation. I'll share my screen with you because we developed a nice little spreadsheet that we've been working with our clients on. It's not perfect, but it's a good starting point. There's a lot of information that the banks, or we think the banks will be requesting. So we definitely want to be proactive and have all this information readily available for you, because as soon as that 8-week period of time comes up, we want to be able to apply for the forgiveness request. And then the bank has 60 days in order to accept the forgiveness portion or deny it. And as quickly as they're trying to get this money out to people, they're going to be a lot more strict on the forgivable portion. So this will give us a nice little template of things that we would need for that period of time. We talked about rent. A lot of our clients also own the real estate that they own, so they might not have a lease agreement in place, or maybe it's outdated. So it's really important they have a lease agreement in place in order for this to be forgiven. And then we request all this documentation. We also have a calculation of the original PPP loan amount. So if we haven't submitted the PPP loan application, we can run that calculation for you to see what you would qualify for. A lot of the different providers are maybe not providing the full loan amount, so we have this support, and we can work directly with the lender to request the amount that you are eligible for. This is free, essentially free money, as long as it's used for the proper reason. So we want to make sure that we properly calculate and obtain a loan to the full amount. This is what you can spend your money on. So this is a question we're beginning constantly that we're trying to make sure everybody's aware of, because the last thing we want to do is receive these PPP loans and use it for other business related purposes and not payroll or the recommendation of different expenses that we can get fully forgiven. So it's the payroll cost, and this also includes health benefits, retirement benefits as well. But it's going to be the payroll cost, and this is also a direct calculation of how the PPP loan is calculated, and then it also includes if you have interest on a mortgage, rents, which we talked about, the lease agreement, utilities, which includes the phone system, internet, but we have to have the proper documentation. So we need to figure out if we have the accounting processes in place, what our expenses for utilities was before the disaster, and then show proof of the expenditure for this 8-week period of time. What's included in payroll? So it's for self-employed individuals. This is also a calculation based off of your 2019 tax return. So it's important that you get that filed as well. But this is constantly changing, and we're working with the AICPA to give them recommendations too, in order to help the SBA, because I think there's a lot of things that the forgivable portion should be changed. So we're also constantly going to be having updates, but we just need to know what the current law is, and this is what's required from them. It does not include the FICA and FUTA taxes that the employer pays. So you might see $10,000 or whatever your payroll cost is. That's not necessarily the full forgivable portion. So we have to run through that calculation in order to make sure we have the correct amount. And then we have a spreadsheet in order to calculate what each employee is. There's also a caveat in there that you have to have the same full-time equivalent employees that you did before the disaster. So a lot of businesses are trying to operate a little bit more leaner, but in order for the forgiveness to occur, we have to have the same level of employees we did before the disaster at the end of June 30th. So that's a caveat, and if not, then a portion of it will have to be paid back. After that 8-week period of time, things could change, and you can reevaluate your staffing needs. But we just need to abide by the way we can get it fully forgiven. And then there's a whole separate situation that people are not incorporated, but they still operate as a sole proprietor or independent contractor. They can certainly, a lot of people are thinking that they cannot apply for it, but certainly that they can. And there's just a separate calculation on this. So we just need to address their situation a little bit more differently than somebody that has direct payroll costs. There's a lot of things we still don't know, and we have a lot of questions to SBA. We actually have a contact over there that we've been reaching out to. So we're trying to get the most recent, most up-to-date information and guidance pertaining to our situation. Every client situation is different, unique. So it's not one catch-all. So that's why we've been having a lot of one-on-one meetings with business owners, trying to understand their situation and how we can assist them through this. This is a time that I think we can really provide a lot of value. We're always focusing on providing additional value to our clients and to business owners. So we're now only thinking about what their current situation is, but how we can operate their business 5-6 weeks from now, especially after this SBA PPP loan is forgiven. So I know it's only 15 minutes. We've put 300 plus hours of research into this, and I could talk probably for 8 hours, but I don't want to bore you guys too much, and I know we're all on a tight time frame, but feel free to ask direct questions, and then I'm sure my information will be available too, so you can set up a Zoom call with us to have more one-on-one meetings regarding your particular situation.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, there. So I think also what I heard was further validation for anyone else who's been on any other calls that Rob and I have been on, where we've said, hey, get to know your CPA really well, get to know your banker really well. And this is a really great example of why that is. So it looks like you guys have done a really great job of putting some work into really, helping people out. And then definitely Andrew's contact information will be available through me. Anybody can message him directly here in the chat if you'd like while we're still going. We did have a couple questions come in while we were going. So Rob Simon, who's on our team at Sharpe CFO, actually had a question in the chat thing. So Rob, if you want to go ahead and address Justin with what you asked him.
Yeah, I can start there. I just kind of curious, Justin, with employees. So if an employee, for example, because there's no childcare and there's no school, has no other childcare option and needs to take care of that, or say a particular employee has some known risk factors, asthma or other things known that are more to COVID, and if that employee says, hey, I need to still work remotely at home as I've been doing, if the company or business grants that to the employee, do they have to grant that then to all employees to allow that, or can they make an exception like that?
So quick answer is, yeah, they can make an exception. The thing I should say up front before I delve into any employment law issue is that employment law stuff is very case by case. So there's almost never going to be a one size fits all answer for whether one employee whose employer said no versus another employee whose employer said yes. It's going to be very different whether the employer was following the law in both situations. So it's going to be very fact intensive based on what the employee situation is, how big the employer is, what industry the employer's in. So our general advice to employers is try to just get as much information as you can from the employees. If there are, pre-existing conditions that, ask them to provide you with information about it. Be very careful you're not overstepping your bounds and asking for protected healthcare information where you shouldn't. But allow the employee to give you as much information as they can, and do your best to try to work with your employees if they need to work from home, or if they need to have accommodations for their work because of their kids or childcare or anything like that. And the more you try to work with them, the happier employees are going to be, and the less likely they are going to be to try to find problems with what you've done. But in general, no, an employer isn't going to be required to across the board provide the same accommodations to all other employees just because they provided it to one particular employee.
Okay. And they could, in theory, too, though, kind of limit or kind of put restrictions against visitors, or even having visitors, or could they also say with certain other people that who they maybe they don't want them to meet with too many people, so to speak, just trying to control their environment?
Yeah, so employers and businesses certainly can do that, just as long as they're not doing it in a discriminatory fashion. I won't delve into all the law on how to not discriminate against your customers, but we don't have time for that. But if you think you have a problem, definitely give us a call. But yeah, you're certainly within your rights to impose restrictions on that, and it's probably advisable to do that in this situation to make sure that you're complying with the orders. You're not allowed to have gatherings of 10 people or more. You're not allowed to have. You're not allowed to require people to be inside of 6 feet spaces from each other. You got to continue to follow those regulations and those guidelines, and you're going to have to impose some restrictions on customers and clients if you are a place of business that regularly sees kind of a constant flow of people.
Great.
Cool. All right. Andrew, we had a question for you about the guidelines for reporting back to the SBA to get forgiveness. Are we required to report back immediately after 8 weeks?
You're not required immediately, but we do recommend that. As soon as we can get forgiveness, I think that'll help us as business owners have a peace of mind. I know a lot of our clients are stressed about getting the PPP funding right now, so we want to make sure we have everything documented, but we don't have to. I think we have 30 days. There's definitely going to be more guidance on it as we come about, but certain things that they need are the 941s, a detailed payroll report that shows how the expenses are being used, and then obviously the lease agreements, copies of any receipts, updated balance sheet, and profit and loss statement. They'll probably want it per week as well. So as much information as we can provide, and that way they don't have to come back and ask us questions. We want to have everything readily available. We're also writing letters to the lenders. So we have to submit the forgiveness portion directly through the bank or the institution. And we write a letter to explain their situation and that CPA approves of all the information that it has been properly reviewed. So there's going to be some more guidance on that, but we have the proper things that we currently need, and just making sure you have proper record keeping, which is so important now and really into the future as well for budgeting and planning purposes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So Justin, somebody just asked a question that I think about too, and other people have asked us. I'm interested to hear what your answer is going to be to this. So what sort of legal liability is an employer in if they follow all of the guidelines for keeping a clean environment to reduce risk and doing all the things they need to do that you mentioned and we've all kind of talked about, but then an employee on their own time outside of work is exposed to the virus? So, I think that's on everybody's mind. A lot of this, I understand that we're talking about, a lot of these restrictions that we're placing on are a lot of CYA, right? But it's going to happen, and we know it's going to happen. So what do we do?
So theoretically, if you are in a perfect world, if you're following all of your obligations, you're imposing all the requirements that people stay 6 feet apart. One of the important things that you're going to be doing is doing daily what's the word I'm looking for? Daily symptom checks, daily assessments of your employees to make sure that no one's showing up to work with any symptoms or having had any exposure to the virus. So if you're doing all that, theoretically, you're going to be fulfilling all your obligations and you're not going to be liable. There's not going to be any negligence claims, or the Department of Health is not going to come in and say you weren't following your obligations. Now, because of the way the virus manifests itself, there is that sort of incubation period where for up to 2 weeks, it's possible that no one knew that they were exposed. So you're not going to be, it's highly unlikely, let's say that you're going to be held liable for, allowing an employee to continue work when they had no idea that they were exposed, because the person they were exposed to was exposed didn't know that they were exposed either, because of this kind of extended incubation period. So as long as you're continuing to follow your obligations, you're being smart about it, and you're keeping your lines of communication open with your employees, explaining to them, hey, if you have any symptoms, if you are exposed, you have to tell us. And also asking them every day as they're coming into the office, how are you feeling today? Probably get a little bit more detail with them than that, but that's kind of the idea. Now, hopefully, then you won't be really exposed to much, if any, liability.
Okay, great. Carrie, I feel really bad that I'm sure you have a few things that you'd like to add in here. Anything from an insurance perspective that you'd like to throw in on any of those questions?
No need to feel that. I would just tag a little bit onto the previous question Justin got regarding employees becoming sick, contracting COVID-19 related to workers' compensation. So that's one thing we've been getting questions on, is if an employee contracts COVID-19, can that be a workers' compensation? And strictly talking about Ohio, because we're talking in most cases about going through the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. And what the Bureau of Workers' Compensation said is it really depends on how the employee contracts COVID-19 and the nature of the occupation. So generally, communicable diseases aren't workers' compensation claims, because employees and people can be exposed in a range of ways. And few jobs have a hazard or risk of getting diseases in a greater degree or a different manner than the public generally. But if you're in a position, your employee is in a job that poses a special hazard or risk, and that person contracts COVID-19 from the work exposure, then the Bureau could allow that workers' compensation claim.
Is there any other connection, Carrie, to like general liability, ER liability because of that, or because COVID-19 being contracted in the workplace?
Rob, the sound went out a little bit, so I'll try to do my best to answer that. But from what we know now, there's still a lot that remains to be seen, because the situation is so new. And so we're watching the situation. There's all kinds of different exposures, not just from general liability, but even things like, let's take workers' compensation. If you have employees who are working remotely and they claim injury and they're working from their home, was it really a workers' compensation incident, or were they mowing their grass? That kind of thing. So there's a number of areas that are opened up, and I think time will tell a little bit as we get further into the process. It's a bit of a vague answer, but I think a lot remains to be seen, and as will how insurance companies react to these claims. Underwriting methodologies that may change, policy language that may change, also kind of remains to be seen.
Okay. All right, cool. Andrew, just the last thing, and then I'll kind of let everybody give a quick closing statement. Andrew, we've heard, and you might have mentioned this, but we've heard a suggestion that companies should open up a ledger account, basically, for all of the expenses that relating to what they use the money for. Are you advising clients to do that? Do you think that's a good idea, or any other thing like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, the more documentation that we have, the better. So we have some clients that don't even know how much they spend in utilities a month, and you're really diving through their bookkeeping program, QuickBooks we recommend. Diving through there, we can uncover what would actually qualify. So keeping a proper ledger will definitely allow us to make sure we know the full forgiveness amount, and also it's good to plan out the next 2, 3, 4, up to 8 weeks, so we don't have any of those funds left to pay back.
Cool. All right, great. Thank you all very much. I do want to close out here real quick because I understand we want to be respectful of people's time, but I want to give each of our panelists the opportunity to give a quick closing statement, maybe a quick blurb of their contact information, because they were only given a few minutes to talk about a very, very, very long story. Justin, why don't you give us a quick closing statement with maybe your contact information, and we'll go down the line real quick.
Thanks, Ryan. I dropped our website in the chat there briefly before. I just typed my email in there as well, so you can check us out on the website and subscribe to our newsletter. A lot of good information going out there. Or you can email me, and we have also given some people a free 45-minute advice session on how to reopen and what they're doing going forward. So if you want to set something up, feel free to shoot me an email and we can schedule something, and we'll sit down one-on-one. You can ask us any of the questions you want. We won't charge you for that time. And then hopefully kind of get you guys right as you're reopening for business. And with respect to getting some of these policies and procedures in place as well, we've been able to do some quick policies and stuff for clients and a quick review of their current policies to make sure they're in the right place for about $1,000. So if you're interested in talking to somebody about that, or if you'd like to share that information, just mention that they saw it through this webinar and got that information from you through this webinar, and we'll figure out a way to help them out and hook them up for what is hopefully an affordable price to get them started back in this, because we know a lot of people have lost a lot of revenue, and we're not trying to price gouge everyone like the toilet paper salesman.
Right. Okay, go, Carrie.
Okay, thank you. This is Carrie again. Obviously, I also put my contact information into the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. We have a lot of resources available to help as templates and guides, and as well as there's a lot of information out there through OSHA, through the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, the Ohio Department of Insurance, Restart Ohio. It's just a matter of knowing what direction to go in. And again, I'm happy to help point you in the right direction, and wish everybody the best of luck and stay safe. And we're in this together.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Andrew.
I think I was muted there for a second. Yeah, one caveat I do want to mention is that these things are changing so quickly. So by the time we even start this webinar, things could change. So just be patient, but always reach out to us or somebody that you trust to making sure you have the most recent information. We are here. I will share my information. You can schedule, we use Calendly, so you can schedule a time to do a webinar or a phone conversation that works well for you. You can also email us directly. My email is at asomich@somichcpa.com, and we're really here to help guide you through this whole process, not just now, but also down the road, because looking into the future, there's just so much more value that we can provide. We do a lot of tax planning strategies as well. So our goal is to help small businesses and really propel them into the future. And feel free to reach out if you want more information.
All right, very good. Again, thank you all very much. For everybody else still on the call, we'll do a few more of these from us, maybe interviewing some of these guys one-on-one. Our contact information is on the screen. If you'd like access to this, it'll be on our YouTube page, channel, that is. You can also email both Rob and I for any contact information for any of our panelists, as well as for further information. So again, thank you all very much. Stay safe, be well, and we'll talk to you soon.